Yeah, there's no page number, it's just chapter 4. We're looking at the book of Maccabees. And just to catch everybody up, the book of Maccabees is about a family who at the time of the Persian persecution by King Antiochus wants everyone to be like the Greeks, speak the same language. He says they can no longer read the scriptures. He's gone into the temple and sacrificed a pig on the altar. He says he wants them to speak Greek, act like Greeks, no circumcision. And there's a Jewish family nicknamed the Maccabean family. And Maccabee, because the oldest one who's taken over now is Judas. And Judas's nickname is Maccabee, which means the hammer. And he's the one who is going to kind of lead the family in revolt against the Persians. And this is going today, chapter 4, is where we're going to first encounter Hanukkah. Okay? This is the festival of Hanukkah that they're going to celebrate. It's not going to be quite the same way as we talked about it. You know, I did all the festivals. It's going to be a little bit different because the book of Maccabees doesn't say a lot of the things that they kind of do today with the lights and all of that. Okay? That is added on from the scriptures. And you'll see, it's kind of very simple in the book of Maccabees. So now they're fighting. They've made some decisions because some of the Jews got trapped in a cave because they wouldn't fight on the Sabbath. So these guys are very, very legalistic. This is what the Pharisees and Sadducees are going to come out of, okay, is this Maccabean family. And everything is about the law. We got to preserve the law. We got to follow the law. But they're making concessions. And one of the concessions was, okay, we are told not to fight on the Sabbath because it's work unless we're attacked. Then we can fight. Okay? And we're going to see a little bit of that today. Okay? So they keep kind of stretching the law and stretching it for their own purposes. Okay. Now, by the time they come, by the time this is written, it's a number of years after this actual revolt that this is written. And you got to remember this is written by the victors. So they kind of, they kind of spill it to their way of thinking, okay? But not only that, there's going to be some times I'll share with you that it's very pharisaical, not according to the Sadducees. Because by the point that this is written, the Pharisees and the Sadducees are arguing with one another about what is correct and what is not, okay? So they kind of write this story, the Pharisees, to say we're the right party. Okay, and you got to follow the law. Now, Jordan, I think last week you asked me a question about how come God is never mentioned in here. And I think it was you, if not, you're the one I'm blaming. Now, I love that because I love to go back and research things. Yeah. And I just researched and researched, and there's no scholarly writings on that. Really? So I'm thinking I need to do something on that. That might be my next thing, okay? The only thing, as I read through it, it's this, their concept at this point is so legalistic, it's almost like God takes second place to the law. And it's almost like, I'm going to say it's kind of like a Star Wars thinking, that the universe is out there and they're going to help us, the forces of the universe. And that's kind of the way it comes across. It never says God, it says heaven or he, you know, and it's kind of like there's some sort of force moving that will protect us. And that's one of the reasons it didn't get into the Protestant canon, that it was apocryphal material. That, and there's a lot of historical mistakes in it too. Okay? Some of the things are absolutely right on. We know historically. And some they've messed up. And I'll share them with you. Okay, are we ready? Is that enough of an introduction? Everybody with me?
Yes.
Okay. Chapter 4. Now, Gorgias. Now, he will also be at times called Nicanor. But Gorgias took 5,000 infantry and 1,000 picked cavalry, and this division moved out by night to fall upon the camp of the Jews. Now, remember, they've tried twice to attack and annihilate the Jews, and they've lost both battles. Okay? So now the king, King Antiochus, who's the Persian king, okay, and let me, yeah, I'm going to pull this up and down. Okay, so he controls the Seleucid Empire and all of this, even down here into the Holy Land. Now, the Ptolemaic Empire still has some area here, that's the Egyptians, but he even's taken over most of this. So really, other than the Roman Republic here, he's controlling all of this. He's having problems financially because of these Jews. This war is costing him a fortune. So he sets up one person to go in and tax this area. He goes over here to tax this area. Okay? He sends a general down. He loses the battle. Then one of the other guys who wants to make a name for himself, he tries to come down and attack the Jews. He loses. And I have the picture. Did all of you see the picture of Beth Horon last week? I'll send it around again. This is modern day Beth Horon, okay? And this is Beth Horon Higher. And the Jews have made a fortification on the higher city, and the Romans make a mistake of trying to come up the hill to attack them. Okay, and they lose the battle. Okay? So now the king is angry, so he's going to send another army there to get rid of these Jews once and for all. And I'll just send that around, okay, so you can all take a look at that. And I got to put that down so you can see my beautiful face.
You go over the corner and do that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay, so now he's sending this Gorgias, one of his generals, to attack the Jews. Okay. And attack them suddenly. Men from the citadel. Okay, now what is this citadel? Up in Jerusalem, one of the high points is the temple, but even higher than the temple, right next to it, is a citadel that protected the city of Jerusalem. So these men from the citadel were Jews who were going along with the Persians, had given up their Jewish ways. Okay? Eventually, those Jews are going to intermarry with some of the Persians, and we're going to have the Samaritans. Okay? So at the time of Jesus, they hate the Samaritans, and the Samaritan woman, because of this intermarriage that's going on. Okay? So these men from the citadel were his guides. So he got local people to help him out. But Judas Maccabee, heard of it. And he and his warriors moved out to attack the king's forces in Emmaus. Now Emmaus is less than half a day's journey from Jerusalem. Okay? So most of these battles at this point are in this area, and you also have it in your, if you just want to kind of pull it out and have it next to you, I have one of the small maps in your booklets, okay? So here we have Jerusalem right here, and they are in this area here. You see Bethlehem, Jericho, Bethel. It's all this fighting that's going on right in this area. If you look up here, you'll see the city of Modin. That is the Hasmodeans, the Maccabean family's home. Okay? So they're right up here in this area. So a lot of the fighting is going on right around here. Okay? And of course the Jews know the area, the Gentiles don't, the Persians don't, so they have a disadvantage. So they get in some of these Jews to help them. Okay. But Judas heard of it, and his warriors went out while the division was still absent from the camp. So, okay, this general comes in with his army, surrounds the Jews, goes in to attack the Jews. They're not there. They heard about it. They left. Okay? Judas is very good militarily. He knows how to handle this. Okay? When Georgius entered the camp of Judas by night, he found no one there. So he looked for them in the hills, because he said, these men are running away from us. Now, a lot of what we're going to see when we talk about the battles is kind of psychological warfare. They didn't have a lot of great weapons and things like that. But if you could demoralize your enemy to get them to run away, okay, then you had the advantage. Okay? If you ever look at old armor from this time period, maybe I'm not asking this question right. Let me try it. What is significant about the armor of that day that would inhibit people from running away?
It was heavy.
Yeah, I'm not asking it right. What the generals would do is they would arm the front of the soldiers. So they'd have breastplates and shields in front of them. In back, they didn't put any armor. So you were vulnerable if you were running away. Okay? And it was the way of them saying, you run away, you're going to get killed. Okay? So a lot of it is we want to psych out our enemy. You know, we're stronger, we're better. Not only that, there was a thinking, not only for the Jewish people, but for the other countries, that if you defeat your enemy, your God is bigger than their God. Your God is better than their God. Okay? So they can say that we have God on our side. Okay? Which is another psychological thing. Okay? Now, so now they come in, okay, and they're thinking, oh, they're running away from us. They must be scared of us. At daybreak, Judas appeared in the plain with 3,000 men, but they did not have armor and swords such as they desired. This is early on in the battle. In a couple of chapters, they're going to be well equipped. They don't have it at this point.
Didn't they plunder last time?
They did, but they don't have what they desire. They're building up militarily, Jordan, but they don't have everything they need yet. Okay? We're going to see a real change in a little while. It's going to say, now, because they plundered everything, they're well equipped.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay? But they're not quite yet. Okay? But, so he's got this army against him, and now they're kind of looking in all of the holes for him, you know? And now Judas has surrounded the army, okay? And I think one of the things, Jordan, when they say not everything they desired, maybe that they're kind of saying, you know, we were against overwhelming odds, you know? When I was a kid, I had to walk uphill to and from school 3 miles in the blizzard, you know.
So my mom told me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's that sort of thinking, you know. You kind of change things a little bit. Right? You also have some time period here where people are editing things, right? You know, and they wanted to show that they against overwhelming odds, and there was. There was no reason why these Persians shouldn't have conquered the Jews. They were militarily well equipped, and the Jews were not. All right? There was no reason why in the American Revolution we won, considering, you know, the differences between the armies, you know, how we were equipped. Let's see, what verse? 7? And they saw the camp of the Gentiles strong and fortified, with cavalry all around it. And these men were trained in war. We don't have enough. We surround them. They got everything. Look at it. They're trained. They got horses. They got, what's the other thing they have? Elephants. Elephants. When they talk about cavalry, it doesn't necessarily mean horses. We think that. The Persians are using elephants. I'm going to see that in just a little while. But Judah said to those who were with him, do not fear their numbers or be afraid when they charge. Remember how our ancestors were saved at the Red Sea, when Pharaoh with his forces pursued them. And now let us cry to heaven. See, it's not, let's not pray to God. It's kind of this mystic force out there, you know, to see whether he will favor us and remember his covenant with our ancestors and crush this army before us today. Then all the Gentiles will know that there is one who redeems and saves Israel. Our God is bigger than your God. When the foreigners looked up and saw them coming against them, they went out from their camp to battle. Then the men with Judas blew their trumpets. Not trumpets, but shofars. Okay? The ram's horn. Makes a really loud sound. Really. Have you all heard the blowing of the shofar? Everybody?
Oh, yeah.
No, okay. Jim, can you do me a favor? Can you bring up something on your phone with the blowing of the... And when you get it, just tell me?
Just play it?
Yeah. Yeah, when I tell you to play it, you're going to play it. I'm the general here.
Are we going to vote on that?
Yeah. Yeah, you can vote on it.
It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I was just thinking.
Okay. Yeah, you were just thinking,
I
yeah.
was thinking that when it said here, let us cry to heaven, and this is in the Catholic Bible, right? I was thinking maybe that's where they get praying to everybody who's in heaven, like the saints and everybody.
Actually, it comes, and I gave that sheet to Jordan last week. It comes from 2 Maccabees, where it talks about praying for the dead. Do you have that?
Yeah,
Not
second
praying to them,
Maccabees
but
15.
praying to the saints.
Yeah, it comes from
Okay.
second Maccabees. It comes from the second book of Maccabees, not the first one.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, play it again.
Can it be louder? It's really loud.
This will be a ram's horn he's blowing through.
Yeah, that's a shofar.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That guy's good.
yeah, he is good. Did you hear all the different notes and stuff?
Yeah.
And I think I shared this with you before. When we lived in upstate New York, we had a volunteer fire department. And the way they would announce the fires is they had big blowhorns. And they had long and short blasts. And when we first moved there, everyone said, in your closet you'll find the information you need. I thought, what? We opened up our closet, and there is, and every street in town had some sort of code to it. 2 short, 1 long, you know? And I tell you, the whole congregation, whenever those went off, they went up and they checked it out and said, oh, I know whose house that is, you know? I mean, it was that, and the shofar was that sort of war instrument that they could call people and they could tell the troops, go left, go right, you know, and it was that sort of idea. When the Scottish lost the war against the English, they prohibited them from playing the bagpipes anymore. Because the bagpipes were originally an instrument of war. And all those different tones, it was a language. Okay?
And if you've ever heard a bagpipe, you'll never forget it.
Yeah.
I love the
It sounds like somebody dying.
I have a wee collection of CDs in my car. That's easy listening to music. I love bagpipes. If you bury me, you will have a bagpipe in the sanctuary.
Okay. I'll tell you what, we'll have a bagpipe a section and a non-bagpipe section.
Don't worry, I got it covered.
Tom, I just think
I wish I could.
Tom, I just think Barbara said you're going first.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick that message up.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear whenever a policeman in New York, or I guess anywhere, they always have bagpipes.
Yeah.
Oh, they're funeral.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's
And
just a
fireworks.
tradition.
Yeah.
There is
Firefighters too.
there is an Episcopal high school in Bel Air,
St.
Right.
Thomas.
St. Thomas, and they still play the bagpipes there.
Oh,
We-
do they? The
Yeah.
headmaster is a gold medal winner in
Bagpipe.
Edinburgh in bagpipe.
Oh, okay.
Mike
I didn't know that
Cusack.
part of it. Yeah.
Well, he used to be their bandmaster, and he played at my mother's funeral.
Oh.
Just so you
I
know.
had the bagpipes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
love
At
them
the
too?
wedding, she had the bagpipes.
My daughter's wedding, we had bagpipes.
Bagpipes.
Oh.
Right. Okay. How do we get off on bagpipes? Come on.
didn't do it.
Because I said bagpipes. No, you said bagpipes.
I wanted you to hear the shofar. They use it today, if you ever go to Israel, up on the temple, what little is left, they'll call people to worship. It's also an instrument for calling people to worship. Like we used to ring the bells in America for church services, you know, or tolling for the dead, you know, that all of those things. Okay, so let's see, what verse? I think I was on 7.
I think you finished that one.
No, you're
Okay.
You're down by 12.
12, okay.
14 maybe.
When the foreigners looked up and saw them coming against them, they went out from their camp to battle. Then the men blew the trumpets and engaged in battle. The Gentiles were crushed and fled into the plain, and all those in the rear fell by the sword. Okay, so all the ones who were running away didn't have the armor, so guess what? They were hand-to-hand combat, and we stabbed them in the back.
Yeah.
Okay? They pursued them to Gaza, to the plains of Idumea, and to Azotus and Jamniah, and 3,000 of them fell. Now, Jamniah is significant for the Jewish people because after the time of Christ, they have a conference in Jamniah to codify the Old Testament and say what was canonical books and what were not canonical books. Okay? And so that is a significant thing here. But let me show you on the map what's going on. So they're fighting up here in this hill country around Modin, and now here is Idumea. So they're pushing them back this way and this way. This way and this way, into the Philistine area and into Idumea.
Well, Azotus is on the coast.
Yes, right there. That's, well, it doesn't show in this map. I think it was Philistine country though. I think that needs to come up a little bit. But they're pushing them this way and this way.
I'm having a hard time figuring who was surrounded by who here.
Okay, the Persians went into the camp of the Jews. They weren't there, so they started looking for them in all the hill country. Judas Maccabee, with his troop, went out and surrounded the Gentile Persians, okay? And now they're coming in to the Gentile Persians, okay? And they're killing so many of them, they're breaking through the line and trying to flee. And wherever they can, they're fleeing, and the Jews are pursuing them and killing them in the back. Okay? Now, in 2 Maccabees, we're not going to read through 2 Maccabees. I told you what I was going to do is add in what we learned from 2 Maccabees. In 2 Maccabees, it said that this battle happened on the Sabbath day, so that they did not pursue them for the plunder because it was a Sabbath day. Okay, so it's a little bit different here. Then Judas and his force turned back from pursuing them, and that's where 2 Maccabees says it's because it was a Sabbath day. And he said to the people, "Do not be greedy for plunder, for there is battle before us." So they're taking the day off. The Sabbath, you know, they've conquered their enemy. We've pursued them. They're running. Let's wait. We're not going to go after their plunder yet. Tomorrow is Sunday. Then we can do it. Okay? Sabbath day would be Saturday. Or Saturday night. They might have attacked. All right. Georgius and his force are near us in the hills. But stand now against our enemies and fight them. And otherwise seize the plunder boldly. So we're going to do that a little later. Just as Judas was finishing this speech, a detachment appeared coming out of the hills. They saw that their army had been put to flight and that the Jews were burning the camp, for the smoke that was seen showed what had happened. So the Jews set fire to the camp of the Gentiles. Okay? When they perceived this, they were greatly frightened. And when they also saw the army of Judas draw up in the plain for battle, they all fled into the land of the Philistines. So now they have this reinforcement come in. The reinforcement sees that Judas has conquered the army that was there, burned their camp, And they said, we're not going to get involved in this. We're taking off to the hills. Okay? So now they flee. So we have some of them fleeing this way. Cilicia is right along the coast here. Okay? Now, Judas is going to do what God commanded King David to do and never did. Eventually, he's going to take over the Philistine territory, the Philistines. They were always a thorn in the flesh. And God wanted them gone, and they never did. Right? Now, I know that oftentimes in the Old Testament, people say, it sounded so cruel. God said go in there and kill all the people. You got to read the scriptures very carefully. It says go in there and tell the people, accept God Almighty or leave. If they don't, kill them. Okay? So they had a chance to leave because it was God's territory. Okay? So, you know, today, when you hear Jewish people talking about their land, it's a God-given right to them. God gave us this land. We don't care what the UN says or anybody else. We don't care what the nations say. God gave us this land. It's ours. You know, and that's that part of the conflict. You know, and a lot of nations don't think that way. They don't think with the Jewish thinking. Right? I don't think a lot of our American politicians think that way. They don't understand that. At one point in America, we had Tom, you can help me.
Maybe.
It was Manifest Destiny
Oh, yeah.
that God had given us the United States, and we were going to control all of it,
Coast to coast.
coast to coast. And it was called Manifest Destiny. It was our destiny. God had given it to us.
That's Monroe.
Was it Monroe? Thank you.
Well, it's Monroe Doctrine, yeah.
Monroe Doctrine.
Came
Okay.
out of that.
Yeah.
Manifest
Okay.
Destiny goes on.
My Jewish history is better than my American history.
Oh, I hope not.
Okay.
March of the Flag speech.
Just as Judas was finishing his... Oh, no, I went on.
Yeah, that's where you want.
When they perceived this, they were greatly frightened. And I did that too. And they fled into the land of the Philistines. 23. Then Judas returned to plunder the camp. So now we're the next day. Okay? And they seized a great amount of gold and silver and cloth dyed blue and sea purple and great riches. Why would the army have all of that?
Because they wanted it.
No. We found out in chapter 3, okay, that what was happening was there was caravans that would follow around the armies, and the defeated army would be sold as slaves. So these were the caravan operators with silver and gold and cloth, purple cloth, that were going to pay for the Jewish slaves to take them into slavery.
That's right.
Okay, so now, not only have they defeated the Philistines, but all these caravan people they've taken over. Because they were going with the Philistines. They put their money on the wrong horse. You know, they were betting on the Philistines winning, and they weren't. Now, why was purple cloth so valuable? Anybody know?
Murex.
The dye was very...
The little shellfish Murex.
Right, yeah.
Purple dye.
There was, there was only one area where it really was very prevalent, and that's, what's the country today? We had a ship that was bombed there.
Well, that's in a lot of places.
Yemen. And it was this little, I think it was a snail-like creature, isn't it? Kind of
shellfish.
little shellfish. And they would crush that to get the real fine purple color. And they had a guild. Well, they weren't going to tell anybody their secret for making purple cloth. So it inflated the prices of everything.
Yeah.
And that's why it was royalty.
That's why it was royalty.
Nobility wore
Yeah,
nobody else.
Because you couldn't get a lot of it. Okay? Today, a modern thinking of that would be diamonds. You know, diamonds are not as precious as many other gemstones. There's a lot of diamonds. So why are they so expensive?
Very few of them.
No, they're more prolific than a lot of other
De Beers
gemstones.
controls the production.
De Beers, the family De Beers controls the production and elevates the prices. Okay, so, yeah, it's the same thing, you know?
The beer's Jewish?
They're Dutch, I think.
I think they're Dutch, yeah.
I don't know.
Could be Dutch too, so.
Yeah,
Could be.
and there's a lot of smuggling and black market and stuff because of that.
Yeah.
Jim's
Okay.
gonna look it up.
But the
There you go.
Have to.
De Beers have most of the market,
Yeah.
so they can keep the prices high.
Because in New York, you say there's a whole street and Jewish vendors, and they
Yeah.
do all the diamonds and everything.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
I don't know, well, Jim will tell us in a minute. Okay, he's our phone expert.
Wikipedia says it must be
You can't even
true.
watch a whole movie, you have to stop to see the details.
I gotta tell you, I am the same exact way. I have my laptop sitting on my thing, and as we're watching movies, I'll say, well, how come that happened? And Manila will say, I don't know. Oh, let me tell you.
That's what you gotta do.
Sometimes she says, shut up, I'm watching the show. Yeah, what'd you find?
I didn't find it yet.
Okay. It's not part of our study, so we're gonna go on, okay?
I'll let you know.
On their return, they sang hymns and praises to God. What would we call the hymns of the Jewish people today? The Psalms. The Psalms, I think some people don't realize, that was the hymnal of the people of the day, okay? And here we see one of them. This is actually Psalm 136. For he is good, for his mercy endures forever. Okay? And they would sing those psalms.
I have a question about
Yeah.
that. So, like in our Bible, they capitalize the he and his. Now, the Jewish, or in the Jewish language, they don't have capitalization or anything like that, or
They have a way of doing that. Now,
Okay.
the reason that sometimes you see it capitalized and sometimes you don't is because of tradition, nothing more than that. Okay? So some translators will not capitalize it. Okay? And in fact, we're supposed to, if we show anything from a publisher that doesn't capitalize the proper name of God, we're not supposed to capitalize it. Sometimes we do it anyway. You know, it was just done in honor and respect,
Right.
but it had nothing to do with the original language.
Okay.
So just get that in mind.
I was just
Okay.
curious if it was a way that they were devaluing
No.
God in this.
No,
kind of
it has
thing.
nothing to do with that.
Okay.
This is the old NIV that I copied for you,
Okay.
and even the new NIV does not capitalize any pronouns for God. Okay, and you'll see in our hymnal there'll be some places, there'll be some hymns where it will be capitalized and some where it will not, because we have to honor the copyright
That particular song.
that particular song.
Gotcha.
Okay, so
They also teach, I know when I was at Jewish school, they would do a G,
yeah,
capital G, and then a dash
yeah,
and a D.
yeah.
And that's how they taught the children about.
Yeah, God. This is, I asked him if I was going to destroy this, and he's like, no. Our mission team is working on budget.
Oh, is that what that was?
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't matter to
Because somebody earlier asked
Yeah.
me that.
So if in Jewish writings, you'll see sometimes they'll put G.
It's not a hyphen, it's a
It's a line,
A line.
kind of like a
Yeah,
line.
yes,
And
ma'am.
I think there's two of
I
them.
read Barry Battlestein's
I
book.
think there's two of them. Because Yahweh has 4 letters in it, the proper name of God. So they do it that way. Because they're so afraid of misusing the name. Now, at some point, when we started talking, Jordan, I said, I thought maybe they didn't want to use God because of the proper name. I don't know if I think that's totally the thing in the book of Maccabees. Because in other places they do use God's name in the proper way.
Well, it just feels very impersonal. That's all I guess.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think that's kind of the way they're thinking about God.
Well, yeah, like David, though, like in the Psalms, it's very personal.
Oh, very personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's him talking directly to God. Yeah. Okay. Thus Israel had a great deliverance that day. Those of the foreigners who escaped and went and reported to Lysasus. Now Lysasus was the general who, I told you, the king went one way and Lysasus went the other way. Okay? Now it's important to hear this guy's name and kind of stick it in the back of your mind, because pretty soon King Antiochus is going to die. Okay? And there's going to be a civil war in the Persian Empire. And Lysasus is going to have a significant influence in that. Okay? You want to hear the rest of the story?
Paul Harvey?
Come back next week. I'll tell you the rest of it.
Paul Harvey.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we're not quite there yet. Okay? When he heard it, okay, so like, it's kind of like he divided up the kingdom into two sections with, you know, he's controlling one half, the other guy under him, supposedly. Okay? But Lysasus is going to want more power in a little while. When he heard it, he was perplexed and discouraged. Now why?
Because he didn't win.
We have the best army in the world. Why couldn't we win against these Jews? Can you imagine this? I mean, you know, he's furious.
They were also larger.
What?
They were also larger.
Yeah. We got more people, we got more arms, we're better trained, and these Jews are beating us. They're uncivilized, they're backwoods, they smell, you know, all the things, you know. You can just hear it, can't you?
No.
Yeah? Yeah, okay. For things had not happened to Israel as he had intended, yeah, to say the least, nor had they turned out as the king had ordered. So not only is he angry at all of his troops, but he's a little worried, you know, what is King Antiochus going to do to me now? You know, I'm supposed to be doing this, okay? Now, one thing I didn't tell you before, you know, it talked about all the plunder, the silver and gold and stuff. In 2 Maccabees, it said, after the Sabbath day. So again, we know that they didn't take the plunder on the Sabbath. That they took, when they took the silver and gold, they distributed it to the poor. So there was some benevolence in this whole thing. But I imagine they're also keeping some for themselves, they're keeping some for the temple, because in a little while they're going to have to redo the temple. Okay? But the next year, did I skip a page? Yeah, okay. But the next year he mustered 60,000 picked infantry and 5,000 cavalry to subdue them.
Hands up.
Yeah, you know, if we couldn't get them, we'll double the army and send it in there. They came into Idumedia and camped at Beth Zor. Now Beth Zor is about 20 miles south of Jerusalem. So down in this area here. So now the Persians come down here and are coming up this way from Idumedia, and they're right about here. Okay? Yeah, they came down. See, for the Persians to come down this way, you have to cross rivers and stuff. You got the Tigris and Euphrates. This is a better path for them to get into the Holy Land. Okay. When he saw that their army was strong, oh, I'm sorry, I missed a very important part. And you might want to put on the side here, this is 164 BC. Because whenever they have the times, it's a little bit different. We're about 3 years into the battle at this point, into the occupation. Judas met them with 10,000 men. So 10,000 against 65,000. Okay?
Plus the cavalry.
Well, no, 60 plus 5, I added them. Oh, yeah, but you have all the elephants and all of that too. So yeah. He prayed, saying, "Blessed are you, O Savior of Israel, who crushed the attack of the mighty warrior by the hand of your servant David." That was 1 Samuel 17. "And gave the camp of the Philistines into the hands of Jonathan," as Samuel 14, son of Saul, "and the man who carried his armor." Remember, Jonathan and the armor bearer defeat the enemy of the Philistines. Okay? "Hem in this army by the hand of your people Israel, and let them be ashamed of their troops and their cavalry." So he's asking the heavens to kind of bless them in this battle. "Fill them with cowardice, melt the boldness of their strength, let them tremble in their destruction." Again, do you see the psychological warfare? "Strike them down with the sword of those who love you, and let all who know your name praise you with hymns." Then both sides attacked, and there fell the army of Lysasus, 5,000 men. They fell in action. When Lysasus saw the rout of his troops, and observed the boldness that inspired those of Judas, and how ready they were either to live or to die nobly, he withdrew to Antioch, and enlisted mercenaries in order to invade Judah again with an even larger army.
Jeez.
Okay?
Where was he getting the money?
Well, see, that's the problem. Is they're taking it from the taxpayers.
Okay.
You know, and
Pay for it.
they're shaking them down for war. You know, and it's costing a huge amount.
Sure.
And you know, the whole empire because of these lousy Jews. I mean, can't you?
Exactly.
That's not my words. You can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the way the Persians are thinking. You know, this little insignificant nation here is causing us all sorts of problems. We can't get them in line. Okay. One thing about 2 Maccabees, it says that as he withdrew to Antioch, Lysasus asked for peace from the Jews. Doesn't say that here. That's in 2 Maccabees. Okay? But he had no intention of having peace because he's going to go get more mercenaries. Okay? Then Judas and his brothers said, "See, our enemies are crushed. Let us go to cleanse the sanctuary and dedicate it, the temple." Okay.
60,000 men turned around and left.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, no, yeah, 60,000, yeah.
And they lost 5.
And they turned around and left,
And there
yes.
were 10,000 Jews
Right.
still, and they ran
Right.
away from 10,000 Jews.
Yes. Yeah.
I saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, I think that was part of it, Jim. You know, when I imagine this in my mind, and I hope I'm not pushing the scriptures too much, you know, these guys are mercenaries. They're coming in to fight for money. We talked about that last week. Yeah. And the Jews are fighting for more than that. Right. And I think the viciousness of seeing the Jews fighting and willing to do anything they had to win the battle. And they're going to do some, in a little while, they're going to really sacrifice quite a bit. It just put fear into the hearts of these people. And they said, "Oh, this isn't worth it. I'm leaving."
Yeah. Okay,
you know, I think it's all the psychological warfare. And they're winning. The Jews are winning this psychological battle. Okay? But now they said, "Okay, let's go back to Jerusalem and take the temple back." Okay? In Hebrew, what is the Hebrew word for dedicate? Hanukkah. Hanukkah. This is when the first celebration of Hanukkah happens. Okay? So they're going back to the temple. So all the army assembled and went to Mount Zion. Mount Zion is where Abraham ascended. Supposedly Muhammad ascended into heaven. It's where the Temple Mount was. Okay? Then they saw the sanctuary desolate, the altar profaned, and the gates burned. In the courts they saw bushes sprung up as a thicket, or as one on one of the mountains. They saw also the chamber of the priests in ruins. So in the last 3 years, no one has been in there, and it's just been left desolate and ruins. So they're going to go in and clean up the temple and redo everything, dedicate it again. Okay? Then they tore their clothes and mourned with great lamentation. The temple meant everything to the people. That's another thing that we see here. It was all about the temple, not about God. They sprinkled themselves with ashes and fell face down on the ground. Again, someone asked me about Ash Wednesday. It was from the Old Testament, you know, a great mourning. And when the signal was given with the trumpets, the shofars, they cried out to heaven, not to God. Then Judas detailed men to fight against those in the citadel, which was right next door. Okay, they're in the temple, but they don't have the fortified area until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he's kind of locked in these Jewish people in the citadel, okay, so they can rededicate the temple. He chose blameless priests dedicated to the law. Everything is about the law.
Devoted.
Oh, devoted. Thank you. And they cleansed the sanctuary and removed the defiled stones to an unclean place. We're told in 2 Maccabees they threw the stones in the Kindred Valley. Now, why is that significant? The Kindred Valley was a huge valley right along the side of the cliff where Jerusalem is perched on. Okay? And because it was a big valley and nobody could live in there, it had very, very steep sides to it, became the garbage pit for the city of Jerusalem. It was the dump. And if there was someone who didn't have a burial plot, they wound up there. Dead animals would be thrown in there. Any of the garbage that you had would be thrown in there. There was a bridge over the Kindred Valley that opened up into a gate into the temple area. And this gate, when it was opened, looked right into the sanctuary, into the Holy of Holies. And when Jesus is riding into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, he's coming down this roadway through the gate into the temple area, right into the temple area.
Wow.
Now, think when we celebrate Palm Sunday and think of that, you know, all the palms and the waving, that's because he's going right in there. That gate is now shut. It was closed up by the Romans. Okay? The Jewish people say, when the Messiah comes, the gate will be opened. It will be. Well, it will be the second coming.
Didn't the Muslims close one of the gates?
It might have been Muslims. I thought it was Romans.
And then they said basically because they're waiting for Jesus to come back too, I guess.
That's right. You know, the funny thing is, in the Muslim faith, it's not Muhammad that's going to return. It's Jesus is going to return to the earth.
Figured that one out.
To bring about the last days. Why?
Why?
Because Muhammad tried to get the Christians and the Jews to unite, and when they didn't, he formed his own religion. So he had both the background of the Jews and the Christians. And it's kind of, okay? The Muslims will, especially in America, will not talk about Jesus, but they have a great respect for Mary. And they will talk about Mary with you. And they'll talk about Mary being the mother of the Son of God.
Oh.
And you know, and I thought, that's a good way to engage them, you know. And they do have respect for Jesus. He was a great prophet, not a savior, in their teaching. It could have been. I'll check. Jim, send me an email on that,
Put him equal.
and I will check that out. Who closed that gate?
Pastor, they put him equal with Muhammad.
Do they what?
Consider him a prophet, so they consider him equal to Muhammad.
I don't think so. I think they would say Muhammad is the latest and greatest of the prophets.
Yeah, and Christ is just a little below him.
Yeah.
So where does Abraham fall in that?
Well, down the line a little bit. I don't know. I really don't know. I would say that there was prophets throughout the history, and then there was the latest and greatest, which was Muhammad. The last and greatest.
I think Abraham is just below Christ, because again, it's Abraham's illegitimate son.
Oh, that's right, that's right. In our thinking. See, the Muslims would trace their history back to Abraham through Esau. Ishmael. Yeah. So, you know, he has the child by the slave woman who is an Arab. Okay, and he kicks them out. And then he has the second son. Okay, so the Jews trace it from one line, the Arabs from the other line. You're right, thank you. That's right, David. Okay, I want to go just a little bit further, okay? And they thought it best to tear it down. I'm sorry. I got to go back a little bit. They cleansed, removed the defiled stone. They deliberated what to do about the altar of burnt offering. Because remember, the Persians offered pigs on it.
Yeah.
What do we do with that now? Okay? Which had been profaned. And they thought it best to tear it down so that it would not be a lasting shame to them that the Gentiles had defiled it. So they tore down the altar. So they tore down the main altar of the temple. Okay? And stored the stones in a convenient place on the temple hill until a prophet should come to tell them what to do with them. Because they felt that there wasn't a prophet to tell them. So, and they didn't know what to do. So let's just put this in storage, you know. They probably had a little German blood in them. They never threw anything away.
Yeah.
Then they took unhewn stones as the law directs and built a new altar like the former one. They also rebuilt the sanctuary and the interior of the temple and consecrated the courts. They made new holy vessels and brought the lampstand, the altar of incense, and the table into the temple. Then they offered incense on the altar and lit the lights on the lampstands, and these gave light in the temple. They placed the bread on the table and hung up the curtains. This didn't happen overnight. Okay, not like the 8 days they celebrate. We'll see how the 8 days came about in a minute. Thus they finished all the work they had undertaken. So they redid the whole temple. Early in the morning, on the 25th day of the 9th month. Everybody knows what that is?
September 29th.
December the 14th.
Oh.
December the 14th.
Oh, that's right, because they,
164 BC. December the 14th, 164 BC. That is one of the dates that we can verify historically. And Josephus is one of the people who said that's the date. That we have the actual date for that. That's when Hanukkah happened. Okay? Okay. They rose and offered sacrifice as the law directs on the new altar of burnt offering that they had built at the very season and the very day that the Gentiles had profaned it. 3 years before, to the date, the Gentiles had offered sacrifices on that. They're going to rededicate it. Dates mean a lot to the people in the Holy Land. Okay? You know, here in the United States, 9/11, we're always kind of worried, is there going to be something, 9/11 happens again, you know, because the date means things to people. Okay? They dedicated it with songs and harps and lutes and cymbals. There wasn't an organ or piano in the place.
Or bagpipes.
Or bagpipes. That was a good one, Jordan. Okay. All the people fell on their faces and worshipped and blessed heaven, who had prospered them. So they celebrated the dedication of the altar for 8 days and joyfully offered burnt offerings. They offered a sacrifice of well-being and a thanksgiving offering. They decorated the front of the temple with golden crowns and small shields. They restored the gates and the chambers for the priests and fitted them with the doors. There was great joy among the people, and the disgrace brought by the Gentiles was removed. Then Judas and his brothers and all the assembly of Israel determined that every year at that season the days of dedication of the altar should be observed with joy and gladness for 8 days. That, the story that is told is that the oil didn't last for the 8 days. It's not here. It was just, they had finished it. It was the proper day, and for 8 days they celebrated. Okay? And that's why some Orthodox Jews will not celebrate Hanukkah, because it was not a God-given festival. It was a man-made festival. Okay? At that time, they fortified Mount Zion, Jerusalem, with high walls and strong towers all around. They're doing a lot of work. They're really beefing this place up to keep the Gentiles from coming and trampling them down as they had done before. Judah stationed a garrison there to guard it. He also fortified Beth Zor to guard it, so that the people might have a stronghold that faced Idumea. So they've conquered, gotten the Persians out. There's a time of peace here. They're rebuilding and refortifying, but the story is not ended.
Beth Zor?
Beth Zora was the town. There are pictures going around.
Oh, that town.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a citadel. Who was in the citadel then?
The Jews.
Oh, that I guess.
The the Jews who had been collaborators with the Persians. Okay. Later on, at the time of Jesus, the citadel will be occupied by the Roman forces.
Right.
Although everybody thinks that Pontius Pilate was there in Rome, there in Jerusalem. He was not stationed in Jerusalem. He was stationed in Caesarea Maritime. There's a Caesarea Philippi where Jesus does a lot of his preaching. Caesarea Maritime is where the Roman garrison was. It was along the coast here. But he comes over to Jerusalem for the Passover because they're worried about rioting in the city of Jerusalem. Okay. So he brings over forces to reinforce the garrison there, who has just a handful of people. Also in the garrison at the time of Jesus would be all the temple guards.
Right.
Remember, you have the Jews and the Romans each have a standing army at that point. That's what causes all the conflict. Okay, let's close with a word of prayer and our benediction. Heavenly Father, thank you for opening your word for us, letting us see the importance of coming to you. It's not just about this heavenly, mystical type of feeling, but we know that with you we can accomplish all things, that with you and through Christ Jesus we have the power to live the lives you want us to live. And we can be people like Judas, fighting for our faith, not with swords, but in gentle, loving ways, sharing that good news, that love of God with the community around us. Just help us to be that type of people by pouring out your Spirit upon us. We ask this all in the most precious name of Jesus.
Amen.
Amen. Receive now the benediction of our Lord. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. 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 Have a great week.